So now, in the face of all of these, Ojukwu declared Biafra. Ademoyega wrote that Ojukwu declared Biafra knowing that he was not militarily prepared. Sun Tzu would have said to Ojukwu, "Military tactics are like unto water, for water in its natural course runs away from high places and hastens downwards. So in war, the way is to avoid what is strong and to strike at what is weak." Britain, America, and other foreign interests were obvious to Ojukwu by now. He knew about their wars and had seen that Biafrans were not militarily prepared to fight a Nigeria backed by all these foreign interests. He should therefore had avoided combat with Nigeria. Sun Tzu would have told Ojukwu to be like water and avoid a war with a Nigeria backed by Britain and other foreign interests. Then there is the famous Ojukwu speech of fighting to the last man, which a lot of Biafrans must have internalized, as our Biafran sister can be seen using the same suicidal, hypnotic war slogan in this clip.
We shall never go back to Nigeria again. God's grace will surely emerge as a nation. And so, as far as this war continues, we'll fight to the last man.
But where does this phrase come from? Europe and their wars. You hear it in their war movies and in their actual wars. How did our men learn this suicidal war slogan, which they in turn taught our people? By fighting in their European wars and probably hearing this phrase all the time. As recent as the Russian-Ukraine war, a US Senator, Lindsey Graham, is heard saying that Ukraine will fight to the last man.
4 months into this thing, I like the structural path we're on here. As long as we help Ukraine with the weapons they need and the economic support, they will fight to the last person.
Fight to the last man. Such suicidal war slogans only make sense when your back is to the wall. Were the backs of Igbos and Easterners really to the wall? They still had their formidable military base in Enugu, at least when compared to other parts of Nigeria, which gave them a negotiating power. They could have easily just quietly continued to build that. If they insisted on compensation for the Igbos who suffered northern violence, even Britain, with all their anti-Igbo propaganda, would have willingly paid financially and funded infrastructures to that effect in the eastern region. Igbos still had that much respect back then, as opposed to now. Also, author wrote of Ojukwu's speech he heard while in prison in Warri, which goes this way, that even when he, Ojukwu, was finished, his men, be finished, the grass would fight. He wondered why Ojukwu would make such a speech, knowing he was ill prepared for a war in Nigeria, and if this was some kind of suicide plot or a reverse pogrom. Again, I ask the question, were the backs of Igbos and Easterners really to the wall? According to Ademoyega, despite the fact that about 50 Igbo officers were deleted during the counter-coup, the region was still superior to the remainder of Nigeria all put together in terms of senior and seasoned officers. I agree. But deleting 50 Igbo officers is a traumatizing high number of people to delete from one region in this present time. How much more back then when we did not have such mass deleting as we do now? This is why we all must say no to violence on our motherland. Ademoyega criticized the prolonged Biafran warfare, which he wrote destroyed the cream of the Igbo race, and I agree with him 100%. Sun Tzu would have had quite a lot to say against prolonged warfare to Igbos, which ironically a lot of Biafrans, especially Igbo men, seem to boast about being able to fight for a long time against an opposing force much greater than them. Sun Tzu would have said to Biafran men, though we have heard of stupid haste in war, cleverness has never been seen associated with long delays. There is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare. In war, then, let your great object be victory, not lengthy campaigns. Sun Tzu would have said to the leaders of Biafra, the skillful leader subdues the enemy's troops without any fighting. He captures their cities without laying siege to them. He overthrows their kingdom without lengthy operations in the field. Please, let us say no to violence. On the issue of sabotage, with the exception of Ifeajina, whom Ademoyega from the get-go had almost nothing good to write about him other than his Olympic gold medal, many people who had different ideologies were erroneously labeled saboteurs. Take the Liberation Army of Nigeria, sponsored by Ojukwu. Ademoyega wrote about that. A lot of people that subscribed to the ideology of the Liberation Army of Nigeria fought alongside Biafra. Again, this Liberation Army of Nigeria were sponsored by Ojukwu. Remember that. To me, this clarifies the role a lot of Yorubas, for instance, played during the Biafran War. Both the Liberation Army of Nigeria and Biafran agitators wanted change. However, those who fought under the banner of the Liberation Army of Nigeria, including some Igbos, still believed in one Nigeria and just wanted to root out the corrupt politicians. But the Biafrans wanted a separate nation from Nigeria. And you know that famous question the Bible asks in the book of Amos chapter 3 verse 3. Can two walk together unless they agree? I think failure to articulate their different agenda led to the unnecessary deleting of good people labeled saboteurs, when in actuality they just had differences in ideologies, which on the face of it looked identical because they were all against Nigeria's growing corruption. It primarily accounted for all the paranoia and accusations that became the order of the day in Biafra. In conclusion, I honestly think Igbos and other Nigerians as well squandered a lot of great opportunities through a series of bad decisions and unnecessary violence. These have left us with devastating consequences, which present-day Igbos and other Nigerians continue to suffer from. For the longest time, we were exposed to the best of the best Western education. Admission into Ivy League universities in the most advanced societies weren't so restrictive. we had enough resources to replicate same in our countries. Our people would have been better off if these earlier actors were more focused on creating and maintaining academic systems that matched those of the West's Ivy League schools, and making such institutions more accessible to Nigerians. Building multiple infrastructures that would have improved the lives of Nigerians greatly. You would think that the active participation of our men in these foreign wars would have been a deterrent to all the violence that was introduced to Africa in the 60s and 70s. But rather, they fought in these foreign wars, saw all the death and destruction, and then imported those death and destruction to Africa. In fact, they continue to import all the death and destruction they see and encounter in the West into Africa. You would think that they would have calculated that under no circumstance should we engage in warfare with the warring people of the West and East up north, because we were simply no match to them or anyone they backed militarily. We also didn't have the warring spirit they have. Rather, we should quietly start to build a defense system that would make it impossible for us to be attacked by warring people, not for the intention of conquest of other people, but just to protect ourselves from such violent conquest. Sun Tzu would have been very impressed if our men took this route. Sun Tzu would have said to our men that the good fighters of old first put themselves beyond the possibility of defeat, and then waited for an opportunity of defeating the enemy. Another thing, the fact that virtually all the men in the First Republic of Nigerian politics were in their early 20s to early 30s must be taken into consideration, because it accounts for why they were unable to appreciate the deep darkness they plunged the whole country into with their decisions. Their minds were not fully developed. They were so young. And then there is the great gender divide that the increasing Western influence had on Igbos and other Nigerians as well, because of the stern, uncompromising patriarchal nature of the West. When they came to our country with their ideas and influence, Igbo women, as well as all other Nigerian women, suffered. Our matriarchal systems were deemed incompatible and destroyed. In fact, so destroyed, so many of our youthful girls don't even know about these matriarchal origins of our people. In subsequent videos, I would be talking more on Igbo women's war, Ogo, Ụmụnwaanyị, and the fact that this gender divide that gave our men such a huge advantage over us was as a result of Western patriarchal conquest of our original matriarchal system. And I strongly believe that if it were our women that were exposed to as much knowledge and saw all the death and devastation of the West as our men did, we would not have the same violent results we had in the First Republic of Nigeria that has morphed into a cycle of corruption that a few good ones are trying to find a solution to. Now, this is a bit off topic, but in wondering why the West seemed to favor the recruitment of Igbo men, quote unquote, in their warfare as far back as World War I, could these so-called Igbo men actually be descendants of invading hunter-gathering all-male groups that invaded the Niger-Congo region in multiple waves in pre-colonial times? Something to think about, and absolutely a topic to explore in subsequent videos on the people that now make up present-day Igbo people. We are so unaware of our history that such a question would shock a lot of minds. Back to topic. In the words of Sun Tzu, there is no instance of a country having benefited from prolonged warfare, contrary to how a lot of male Biafran advocates boast of the prolonged Biafran war. The book is quite melancholic because Ademoyega really suffered based on his account. Now, do I think Nigeria would have been better off if the January 15, 1966 coup had been successful? I would have to respectfully disagree with Ademoyega. No, Nigeria would still have the problem of corruption, insecurity, and tribalism. Why? Because Nigerians did not develop a practicable national contract given our heterogeneous nature. And 2, Nigerians continue to underestimate the interest of foreign elements in Nigeria at the expense of Nigerians. With new generations of these foreigners and the introduction of technology comes even more foreign interests and challenges for our people. Without a shadow of a doubt, the West, their wars, and financial interests were catalysts to the new brand of violence that visited Africa in the 60s, 70s, and continued to devastate Africa till today, intentionally and unintentionally. The way our men continue to conduct themselves, even when they have tools and resources to make things right, or at least improve the lives of our people, is why I advocate for a rise of Igbo women intellectuals, Nigerian women intellectuals, African women intellectuals, Black women intellectuals, and women intellectuals worldwide. Let me quickly add, I am not a feminist. Watch my videos to know where I stand. This is the only circumstance that will stop us all from perishing, the same way the Renaissance period of the 14th to 17th century saved Europe from imploding on itself from their continuous everlasting wars against themselves back then. We need a peaceful world. We really do. Okay, that concludes my breakdown of the book Why We Struck by Adewale Ademoyega. The next book I would be breaking down is The Nigerian Revolution and the Biafran War by Alexander Madebo. Ademoyega criticized this book a lot, and I can't wait to share with you all my thoughts and start a conversation on that as well. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, Amaka Intellectual Factory. Also subscribe to my other channel, Amaka Narrates. Grab a copy of my book, Nightfall at Ifite Oma, and other stories inspired by Igbo folklore and history. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google Books, and Kobo in ebook, paperback, and hardcover format. The audiobook version is coming soon. Drop your comments below. I really would love to read them and start a conversation. And you can also show some love by donating to my Cash App and Zelle with the information on the screen and in the description box below. Till next time, take care of yourselves, and remember, life is beautiful and worth living. Cheers!